What is going on, everybody? Happy Hump Day, Giants fans. Spring is in the air. We have reached the month of March, and that also means that free agency is right around the corner. So things are now starting to get exciting. Rumors are running rampant. We got a few things to talk about tonight. And of course, this is the beginning of us doing 2 shows a week. We should be live again on Friday about the same time, 7 o'clock, as things are going to pick up. And then once next week hits, guys and lady, we're going to have a lot to talk about because we're going to know who the Giants have signed in free agency, and everybody will have an opinion on it, be it positive or negative. Hope you all had a great week. I know I did. It was nice. I don't know why it was nice. It just was. I couldn't tell you why.
You didn't have to watch the Giants on Sunday. That made it
right. Nice. I wasn't on Twitter this week, so I think it's it's usually a good thing. Keeps me sane. So last week when we were here, we were talking a lot about Matt Stafford being a New York Giant, and I'm pretty sure we were all in agreement we did not want Matt Stafford to be a New York Giant because he was going to cost a lot of money. It came out that the Giants are going to offer this guy $90 to $100 million guaranteed. So I guess Joe Shane really wanted him, and he decided to stay with Los Angeles. I think he actually took less money to stay there. And again, if you're 37 years old, why do you want to come to a rebuilding project when you're a playoff team? So it made sense. I didn't think Stafford made sense here. I don't think any of us thought Stafford made sense here. So we've moved it on now. We have passed the buck to Aaron Rodgers. Aaron Rodgers seems to be the guy now. At least I have a gut feeling Aaron Rodgers is going to be a Giant. I have a gut feeling we're going to see him throwing the pigskin for the New York Giants this year. Adriana, what am I trying to say here? Do you think Aaron Rodgers will be the quarterback of the New York Giants? And if so, how does it make you feel? How would you feel about Aaron Rodgers being the quarterback of the Giants in 2025?
Not thrilled, but the more I hear about it, the more I'm starting to lean like you, where I'm like, oh my God, this is going to happen, isn't it? And I'm really hoping that it's wrong and it's all BS. But like, I just saw some video of Dan Orlovsky talking about it. Prince Amukamara's in the comments, like, yeah, we could have Rodgers and Devontae Adams. And I'm just like, oh God, I'm not on board with it. I think there are other good veteran quarterback options available that I think are going to cost less money than Aaron Rodgers. I think are going to be less of a headache than Aaron Rodgers is going to be. And look, at the end of the day, we're talking about a bridge quarterback. He's going to be here for 1, maybe 2 years. And you could maybe say that if it's only for a year, who cares if it's Aaron Rodgers? But look what he did to the Jets in a year and a half. And that's enough for me. I don't need him here. I really don't.
No, well, to be fair, Adriana, the Jets will jet. I mean, it matters who their quarterback is. The Jets will jet. Anthony, how would you feel? Do you think Aaron Rodgers is going to be the quarterback of the Giants? And if he was, how would you feel about him being here?
I think there's a really strong likelihood that he is. And initially, I was totally against it. But the more that I've thought about it and the more that I've looked at the options available to the New York Giants, the more of an open mind I now have to it, especially if he's able to bring Devontae Adams over with him. I know there's been some speculation about that. Maybe Devontae Adams wants to play on the West Coast for a contender. Maybe he wants to follow Aaron Rodgers. I guess we'll see. But that makes it a lot more attractive to me because I think having a solid number 2 wide receiver, basically a pseudo number 1 alongside Malik Neighbors would be fantastic. And I think Aaron Rodgers could conduct that offense well. Now, obviously, all of the off-the-field stuff is a concern. But the way that I kind of look at it now is the Giants are already so embarrassing and already such a mess. It really can't get any worse than this. So if it's just another media storm to throw into the mix, we just went through the ultimate media storm for 20-something weeks with Saquon Barkley and the New York Giants. Screw it, man. Aaron Rodgers on the Pat McAfee show, whatever. I don't care as long as the New York Giants are winning football games.
Yeah, it's funny because there was talk about if Stafford came over, he would bring Cooper Kupp. And obviously, there's a good chance that if Rodgers is here, he would also bring Devontae Adams, which would give us a legitimate number 2. Chris, I know Aaron Rodgers is your guy. How confident are you?
On the field, not off the field. But
right.
Yes, on the field, I've always been a bit
confident are you that the Giants are going to bring him in? And if they do bring him in, how do you feel about it?
Yeah, I mean, we talked about this last week. And last week I said when I had to pick one of the 2 options, I said I preferred the Rodgers option to the Stafford option. That doesn't mean I'm excited for the Rodgers option. I just thought the Stafford option made a lot less sense simply because I knew it was going to cost them a big extension like it did the Rams. I don't remember the exact contract details, but you were going to have to give them $50 million, probably tack on 2 extra years to the deal. That's what I anticipated if you were to trade for him. And you had to give up draft compensation to get him. With Rodgers, I said, okay, that's a guy that would be here for a year or two, like Adriana said. And I from Joe Shane's perspective, it makes a world of sense because as we talked about over the last couple of weeks, when I asked the hypothetical question, if you're Joe Shane, how would you feel safer if you were to win 8 games and bring in a quarterback? Like what would give you the better chance to retain your job? If you were to bring in a veteran quarterback like a Matt Stafford at the time, that was what we were talking about, and win 8 games, or bring in a rookie and win 4. And at least Anthony, I remember saying that he actually thought that Joe Shane had a better chance to keep his job with the 8-game scenario and not drafting a quarterback. With this, you could kind of do both. If you're Joe Shane and you're worried that if the team wins 3 or 4 games with a rookie quarterback, you're going to lose your job, by signing Rodgers, not giving up any draft capital to do so. Of course, we don't know the contract details, but I can't imagine it'd be more than a year or 2 deal. It gives you that guy that could start and probably win at least 6 or 7 games for you and at least quench the thirst of Mara not to be a laughingstock next year. And he kind of serves as a mentor for the rookie quarterback. So I could see it. And I would think if the team kind of hovered around 500, Rodgers would play the majority of the year. Maybe you see the rookie the last week or 2. If the team starts like 0-4, 0-5, they probably have a quick hook, because that would probably then give Shane and Dable the best opportunity to keep their jobs if they could show hope with the rookie quarterback for the remainder of the year. But that would probably be the plan going into the year. So I could see it. I think it makes sense from Joe Shane's perspective, and it doesn't prohibit you or prevent you from drafting a quarterback with the 3rd overall selection. You could still go ahead and do that. My only doubt is, and apparently that may not be the case, but I always said, I don't know if Rodgers would sign up for that. That was my thinking to that. But if he's willing to do that, he knows the deal going in, I'm okay with it. I'm not going to be super excited, but I'm okay with it. It gives, I think, Joe Shane the best opportunity to keep his job as he gets to mold that young quarterback that I expect him to draft with that 3rd overall pick.
Yeah, I mean, I come from the same line of thinking as Anthony. When I first heard Aaron Rodgers with the Giants, I'm like, oh my God, what the hell are they doing? Here's another freaking media circus. Here's another, here we go again. And then I thought about it. I'm like, you know what? Because if you bring in Aaron Rodgers, he is going to be a bridge quarterback. But it's only probably going to be 1 year because he's not going to want to be a backup. And if you're the Giants, you're drafting a quarterback regardless. So we're going to have a rookie quarterback starting at some point, whether it's later in 2025 or 2026. I don't think Aaron Rodgers wants to be a backup at any point in his career. So this will probably be 1 year. The Giants can get out of it really quick. And yeah, he's one of the greatest to ever play. He might have issues off the field, but on the field, the man, you can't question his greatness. He's one of the most talented players in the history of football as far as the quarterback position goes. And a rookie could learn a lot from Aaron Rodgers, who has a lot of experience. So I actually wouldn't be adverse to them signing him. I personally think they're going to sign him. I have a gut feeling that he is going to be the guy, especially when you hear that they offered Stafford all that money. It's obvious they want a veteran guy. It's obvious they want somebody that is, I don't want to say Hall of Fame caliber, but a guy that has won in the league. Jameis Winston, we all like him, but he's not to the level of Rodgers. Stafford. Rodgers is going to sell tickets, even if no matter who starts. I don't know how Jameis Winston would, but Aaron Rodgers is going to bring media. He's going to bring attention. He's going to bring fans to the ballpark because everybody's going to want to watch a Hall of Famer play.
And it also takes rookie pressure off the rookie. If you take a guy like Cam Ward, nobody's going to be talking about him the first 8, 9, 10 weeks. He gets to learn. So I can at least make sense of it, Bad Dog. I can make sense of it.
Anthony, how many games do you think the Giants win with Aaron Rodgers? If he stays healthy, you got to stay healthy.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he stayed healthy this past season, won 5 with the Jets, and I would argue their roster is a lot better in a less competitive division. So probably 5. I don't know. But there's the off chance that more than 5. But, I mean, we're realistically going to be a 5-win roster. And that's where I had us last year, and we underperformed there, and we went 3. So I'll say 5 to hopeful 7.
Chris, what do you think?
I think I'm in the same range. I mean, you never know in the NFL, right? Nobody thought Washington was going to be what they were this year before the year started. Nobody thought the Giants were going to be what they were in 22 before. So you never know. It's completely unpredictable. But I would probably lean more towards 6 to 8 with Rodgers. But again, I have to see how the offseason plays out. I have to see how aggressive they are in free agency.
Right.
And I think this is an opportunity for Joe Shane to sell Mara, because we heard what Brian Dable said. He was selling Shane and Mara that basically when you have good quarterback play, it could change things fast. this is an opportunity if they bring in a guy like Aaron Rodgers to say to Mara, hey, look, Wandell looks a lot better now. Malik Neighbors looks a lot better now. The offensive line looks a lot better now. So I think they could look at it from that mindset as well. But I would lean more towards that 6 to 8 win in that ballpark, 6 to 8 wins.
Oh, John, what do you think Aaron Rodgers brings to the Giants?
Yeah, I agree with Chris. I think if you bring in Rodgers, you have to bring in Adams. And I just feel like the same way with Stafford and Kupp. Like it's got to be a package deal at that point. If you're going to spend the money on Rodgers, just do it with Devontae and give the Giants a chance to maybe win more games than originally thought with Rodgers. I feel like Chris, where it's like maybe 6 to 8. I think we have a really hard schedule. And I know that the quarterback is the most important position, and obviously he's going to give us an upgrade there, but I think ultimately it depends on the other moves that they make in free agency in the draft, because even if they bring in Rodgers and Devontae Adams, if Andrew Thomas goes down, we're going to lose 10 games. So I don't, it would be nice to have Rodgers and Adams if that was the case, but I'm still not going to have any faith that if Andrew Thomas goes down, like they're still going to win football games just because they have Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, listen, Devontae Adams had a pretty damn good year last year. He can still play. There's no question about it. And if you put him opposite Malik Neighbors with Wan'Dale Robinson and Theo Johnson coming back, you hope Theo Johnson can take a step forward because he looked really good before he got hurt. But they got like Aaron Rodgers that can make the offensive line look better than Daniel Jones could. Our offensive line still needs a lot of work, but let's face it, Daniel Jones wasn't doing our line any favors holding on to the ball the way he did. Aaron Rodgers is a little bit better at getting rid of the ball. It would be really interesting, but to all your points, our schedule is brutal. The NFC East is brutal. We play the NFC North. It was the best division in football last year. It's brutal. We play the AFC West. That is not an easy thing either. So, my God, what do we have there? The Raiders, the Bears, and I don't know who we play in the South. We play the Saints again? I don't know.
Yeah, it's going to be tough to find.
Whoever the last place team was there and the last place team in the AFC East, is that what we get? Like, it's not going to be easy regardless of the Pats, right? So, you're going to get a better Patriots team who could end up with a guy like Travis Hunter or, Abdul Carter.
DK Metcalf.
Right, DK Metcalf. Yeah, we were talking about that in the text conversation today. Before we go any further, I just want to say big shout out to BetUS. BetUS has come on board to sponsor the Giants Collective channel. We really appreciate them. And we were just talking about Aaron Rodgers. Let me just tell you, Vegas likes Aaron Rodgers to become a Giant. Take a look at those odds right there. Minus 300 Aaron Rodgers plays for the New York Giants. And if you want to go to BetUS and bet on this or any other thing, you can go there. You can bet on so many things. There's so many options besides football, but you can bet on the draft. You can bet on Aaron Rodgers. A lot to do there. And they have a great promotion going right now. Go to BetUS, enter the promo code YouTube150. You get a 150% match deposit bonus on your first deposit, a 125% match deposit bonus on your second and third deposit, all the way up to $2,000 bonus cash. They have customer service 24/7, 365 days a year, the fastest payouts in the business within 24 hours. And you also get 10% gambler's insurance against all your net losses as long as you stay active every 6 months. Terms and conditions apply. And when you gamble, I ask that you please do it responsibly, guys and gals, and never bet more than you can afford to lose. But it is obvious. Vegas likes Aaron Rodgers to be a New York Giant in 2025. Hey, buddy.
Hey, buddy. We got the fifth member of the cast.
Yeah, the fifth member just popped up. So, moving on from Aaron Rodgers. Obviously, there's also rumors about the draft now. And I know we have touched on this as well, about Cameron Ward and Shedeur Sanders. This is what we've talked about for months. But now it seems there are a lot of rumors out there that I'm reading that the Giants want to trade up to number 1 and take Cameron Ward. I don't know how much I believe this, but Chris, what is your opinion about this? Do you think the Giants are interested in is this Shedeur Sanders thing? Because I swear to God, last year at McCarthy, I said this is all smoke. The Giants want Caleb Williams, Jaden Daniels, or Drake May. They want somebody to jump up. We want McCarthy, hoping somebody took him and one of those other quarterbacks fell. Nobody bet and the Giants passed. Could they have done that with Shedeur Sanders? Really wanting Cameron Ward? What do you think?
Could they? Absolutely. It's smoke season. And I'll give my theories as to what it could be. We don't know. It's smoke season. But first, I'll speak on the odds real quick. I personally don't think the Giants should be minus 300. I definitely think they're in play. That seems a little far-fetched for me, but we'll see. Rodgers supposedly reached out to the Giants, and we'll see how interested he is in about a week. Hopefully we get our answer once free agency starts. But as far as the Cam Ward, yeah, there's been all you could. I don't go on Twitter a lot now, but whenever I do, the last week or so since the combine, that's all everybody said, that the Giants are looking to trade. I think Jordan Renan posted it. His sources told him that the Giants are looking to trade up to 1 and draft Cam Ward. And that's entirely possible. I also saw Josina Anderson posted that 2 teams inside the top 7, she wasn't specific, like hated Shedeur Sanders, or maybe I'm paraphrasing a bit, but that's basically what she was saying.
Right.
It could easily be the Titans, though, Bad Dog, that is throwing this information out there to try to get teams to want to rush to the top of the order, because it's in the Titans' best interest if there's only one quarterback worth trading up for. So the Titans could be throwing information out there to try to drive up the stock on one of the quarterbacks to try to get the Browns and the Giants into a bidding war,
Right.
or something. So it could be smoke. I don't know. But yeah, I certainly think the Giants are at least interested in probably both quarterbacks. The Shedeur Sanders thing, to me, not just from the Giants' perspective, but like this, everybody's destroying this kid the last 2 or 3 days. It came out of nowhere. Neither guy took part at the combine. Why? Because the guy wore a backwards hat at his interview. He drops to like the 25th pick at some of these mock drafts.
I saw him going 29th in one draft. The Browns traded back up into the first round. Like, he ain't going 29th. What are you?
That's insane to me.
He ain't going past the Raiders.
I feel like there's an ulterior motive here, and some of these teams are trying to create panic for these teams to jump up and potentially get a Cam Ward. But yeah, it seems like a lot of smoke after the combine at the quarterback position.
Where there's smoke, there's fire. Adriana, is it possible this is all smoke and the Giants are really going to take Cameron Ward?
If they trade up, ordered that, as long as they up a first round for 2026. Give up other things, so be it. That's fine. I'm not willing to part with that draft pick yet, as much as I do like Cam. If they want to get Shedeur Sanders out on Joe Shane, like it's like a chance he's going to be there at 3, and I like, if that's your guy, you have to do whatever you have to do to get him. But I just feel like if they throw away draft picks to move up for Shedeur, then I think the Titans did a damn good job of getting these rumors out there and stressing him out that this is a desperate move for him and he had to go up to get him. So like I said, I like Cam Ward. I would like if they do that. I'm agree with you with the Shedeur stuff. I think it's going overboard at this point, but I think this happens every year. Like last year it was, oh, Caleb Williams paints his nails. Oh, Caleb Williams does that. He's not going to go 1 overall because of XYZ. Like, there's always some bizarre thing that people make a big deal out of it to try and ruin players' draft stock. And I don't know what that's about.
They did it to Stroud 2 years ago too with his Wonderlic test, didn't they? They said that he had like a poor Wonderlic. They did it to Tua. You're right. They do it every year. It's ridiculous.
It's so bizarre and it's all baseless. Micah Parsons, like, there's just always something. So I think, the smart GMs will see past that and do whatever they decide to do with their players. I think the Giants do like Shedeur. I just am not sold that they like him enough to get him at 1 if they trade up for that. That's where I'm not so sure on.
Yeah. Anthony, I know, like me, like Adriana, you are definitely a Cam Ward guy. You have been for some time. Is it possible the Giants do trade up to 1 and get Cameron Ward? Do you think Cameron Ward is their number 1 quarterback?
Yeah, absolutely. I think he's their number 1 quarterback because he is the best quarterback in the draft class. And if I have to have any sort of hope that's still alive in this team, I have to hope that they can still evaluate the clear-cut number 1. If everybody thinks he's the clear-cut number 1, I have to hope that the Giants are on the same page and that they're not doing what Dave Gettleman did in 2019, where he was so wrong about the clear-cut number 1 being Daniel Jones when he obviously wasn't. So I think that Cam Ward's the best quarterback in the class. Obviously, I think on the last show, I praised Shedeur Sanders at length. I really like him. I think he's a good quarterback, but I don't think that all of this is necessarily smoke. I think there's a pretty big difference. Chris, you brought up some really good examples like CJ Stroud and Tua and, some others. There's a big difference, though, because those guys were always ranked inside the top 10 to 20 players in the draft class. Shedeur has consistently been in the 20s to 40s on most public draft boards that all of these top analysts are putting out there. And for a while, it's been the media that's been saying he's a great player, he's going to be a top 10 pick, but never have the insiders and the evaluators been in that same stratosphere with Shedeur Sanders. So we made an assumption that the league was in the same stratosphere as the fans rather than the insiders and evaluators. Maybe they're not. Maybe the league actually doesn't view him in this light, and he is going to have a severe drop in draft stock. Like we have seen that before with other quarterbacks. Like you bring up some examples, but there's also, I remember Johnny Manziel was supposed to be a top 10 pick, but everybody's saying, well, on most draft boards, he's in the 30s to 40s. He ended up not being a top 10 pick. Tim Tebow, like there have been other examples that went in the other direction.
Aaron Rodgers was a drop.
Aaron Rodgers is a perfect
the guy
example.
that
Yeah, there you go.
Really compare Shedeur Sanders to from a skill set standpoint. Geno Smith. Notoriously dropped. He was supposed to be it. So yeah,
into the second round too. Into the second round, Geno Smith did. And you guys were mentioning, I think Shedeur Sanders went 29 in a mock draft. I saw him fall out of the first round in PFF's latest mock draft. And PFF's Trevor Sikkema, I listened to his podcast, and he said he got to the combine. He expected there to be some sort of a debate. Some people would have QB1 Shedeur. Some people would have Cam. He said nobody that he talked to had Shedeur Sanders as QB1. Everybody, almost unanimously, it was all Cam Ward. So I actually think that there is fire behind this smoke. That's not to say that Shedeur isn't going to go top 10 because we know NFL teams do get desperate. But I think that fans and certain members of the media are way higher on Shedeur than the league is. And usually when the league is really low on a guy, that consensus gets out there and then that player drops closer to the draft. So I don't think that the Giants would be trading up to number 1 for Shedeur Sanders at all. I think that they would take him at 3. I even saw reports that the Browns don't want any part of Shedeur Sanders. So, who knows what the truth is on that. But if the Giants are trading up to number 1 overall, I think it's going to be Cam Ward. Then the next question is how much are they giving up? And that's a really tough question because if you believe that he's a franchise quarterback, you should be willing to give up a lot. But at the same time, this isn't the same caliber of quarterback class that it was last year. So it's a pretty tricky question. But I don't know. I think that there is something to all the Shedeur Sanders rumors, and I definitely think that there's legs to the New York Giants being interested in trading up to number 1.
Let me ask you a question though, Anthony. If this is true, what is being reported after the combine, that it is essentially become a 1 quarterback draft because so many people have said, like you said, Shedeur Sanders could be falling out of the top 10, could be falling out of the first round. If that is true, why wouldn't the Titans, knowing that Cleveland is going to want Cam Ward as well, why wouldn't they trade down to 2 instead of 3? Because if they
that's exactly what I said on last week's show. If you remember, that's my biggest fear, and I just talked about that on the Bleach Report live stream I did. That's like my number 1 thing that I'm afraid of, and that's why the Giants. We're going to find out, I think, by Monday whether or not they're going to be picking number 1 overall because they have to get that deal done prior to the start of the legal tampering period so that they can decide if they're going to drop a major bag on a Sam Darnold for 3 years or if they're going to go for a 1-year bridge contract with Aaron Rodgers. They need to know where they're picking in the draft by Monday. So I think they're going to really press the Titans. I think that's why the Titans had those immediate right after the combine meetings with Cam Ward, Shedeur Sanders, Abdul Carter, and Travis Hunter. I think those have already happened or they're happening within this week leading up to Monday. That's also that those 3 teams, the Browns included, can decide by Monday where they're going to be drafting in April. So I think a deal is getting done as soon as possible, really, really soon here, probably over the weekend. And then the Giants are going to figure out if they're not able to pick number 1 overall, then I expect them to not go for Rodgers. I think they're going to go for somebody who's got more long-term potential, like a Darnold or maybe even a Russell Wilson. I think that he's got probably more time at 36 than Rodgers does at 41. So I think everything is contingent on where the Giants are picking, and I think they're going to try and find that out by the time the legal tampering period opens on Monday.
Anthony, to piggyback off what you said there, how much do you think it takes to go from 3 to 1? What do you think what's the least you think the Giants have to offer? Do they have to give up next year's first round pick to get from 3 to 1? Or could they just give up like 3 seconds or something like that? Kind of like the Jets did a few years ago when they traded up to get Sam Darnold. Although that was from 6 to 3, but what do you think that takes to go from 3 to 1?
I definitely don't think it takes a first round pick. I think it's going to be 2 top 100 picks. I know a lot of people have been hoping and praying that it's going to be 2/3. I think it's at least a 1/3 and a 2nd. More realistically, probably the bidding gets a little intense now that Cleveland is obviously going to be a contender, and it might end up being 2 seconds, and maybe even a player gets thrown in there. But I also don't know how high the Giants are going to be willing to go, considering the situation that they find themselves in with a number 3 overall pick. They could take a generational player in Travis Hunter, Abdul Carter, and they could realistically solve. It is a intense quarterback market, but there's low-key a lot of options out there. There is Russell Wilson, Aaron Rodgers, Sam Darnold. There is potentially a Geno Smith somewhere floating out there. There are kind of a lot of options at the quarterback position, more so than usual, in my opinion. I could absolutely see, considering the Giants just tried to go all in for Stafford, that would have been a 1 to 2 year play where they could build the roster up a couple more years, knowing that this roster is so far off from competing, so that they can draft a quarterback in 26 or 27. That might still be the plan. Maybe they're exploring trading up to number 1, but the plan might also still be take a Darnold or a Russell Wilson or find a way to trade for Geno Smith. Do that, solve the quarterback position for the short term, and take the best player available at number 3. And I think that that's what the Giants are thinking. We're going to have that plan in place, and we're going to have a trade to number 1 in place, either or. And depending on that price tag for the trade to number 1, if it's too high, we're going to go with the other option. We're going to take the short-term quarterback, and we're just going to take the best player at number 3 because they are sitting in a perfect situation to get an absolute dream superstar player with the 3rd overall pick.
Oh, Gianna, about trading and everything else and hearing Cameron Ward may go to Cleveland. There's obviously a lot of talk out there that Myles Garrett wants out of Cleveland. Is it possible that Cleveland doesn't go quarterback either way and they take a guy like Abdul Carter, unless Abdul Carter's off the board at number 1, but say Abdul Carter is there? Is it possible that they take Abdul Carter and pass on the quarterback? What if the Titans decide they want Travis Hunter? Is it possible Cleveland says, the hell with this, we got to get Myles Garrett's replacement, we're going to take Abdul Carter?
Yeah, I think so, because they still have Deshaun Watson under contract, and I think he's dealing with another injury, and there was talk he might even be out for the whole next season, but you still have him. Yeah, I don't know if I'm like mixing it up from last year, but could have sworn that there was some issue maybe after the season. And I remember thinking, oh God, now they're definitely going to go quarterback because Deshaun Watson's injured. But I think they're in the same boat as the Giants are, that they easily could decide we're going to go best player available here. We're going to trade Myles Garrett, and maybe in a Myles Garrett trade is where they get a veteran quarterback and they go that route. And then they end up getting a rookie quarterback like Will Howard or something in later rounds. So I think because they're in a similar position to the Giants, except obviously that Myles Garrett wants out, that they have that opportunity to say, well, why wouldn't we go Abdul Carter and we'll just get a quarterback later and we'll get a veteran quarterback? Because like Chris said, there are so many veteran quarterbacks that are going to be available this offseason that they have options. And then you look at the fact that Matt Stafford was almost traded. So there's going to be other players, I think, that are also going to be available at the right price. Curious to see where Myles Garrett ends up going, because it sounds like he wants to get the hell out of there. We'll see what ends up happening with that. But I think if Myles Garrett leaves, then how could you not take Abdul Carter if you're them?
Chris, do you think it's possible Cleveland says we don't want Cameron Ward, we'll take Abdul Carter because Myles Garrett wants out of there? He's going to get out of there one way or the other anyway. So even if Garrett was there next year, it might be good to draft his replacement.
Yeah, I mean, I certainly think it's possible they could take Abdul Carter, but I don't think Myles Garrett staying or leaving is going to have any impact on them doing that. If they love a quarterback, I think they're going to take a quarterback. I think it's as simple as that, whether Myles Garrett's on the team or he's not. Now, your question you asked Anthony, I think it's kind of contingent on, in terms of what it would cost to trade up to 1 for the Giants. If it's true that this is now deemed as a 1 quarterback draft at the top of the draft, it's going to cost the Giants more than what we were projecting before, because the Giants would add more leverage if Sanders and Ward were viewed as almost neck and neck even, because now it's much more valuable. As like we talked about extensively, it is so valuable that 3rd pick for the Giants to trade down, being that we viewed it that it was going to be a 2 quarterback draft, because Cleveland could still get the 3 and get Abdul Carter. If it's now a 1 quarterback draft, the Titans are not going to be able to get the best player off the board if they trade back to 3. So it's dependent for me in terms of how much it would cost on how they view Shedeur Sanders and whether or not this smoke is real. But if Cam Ward is far and away the best quarterback prospect in this draft, the cost for the Giants to trade up to 1, in my opinion, went up. I think you're looking at probably 2 second-round picks, if not maybe a 3rd and a 2nd, with a contingency for that 3rd to turn into a 2nd. But I would guess 2 second-round picks if the Giants wanted to move up to 1, if these rumors are true and the league is dampened on Shedeur Sanders.
Yeah, you never know, man. It's as I say, it's a crazy time of year without question. And we'll definitely have more clarity on this when we do this show next week. Again, if you're just tuning in, we will be doing this show twice a week, Wednesdays and Fridays, both at 7:00. So there's going to be a lot more Giants talk now that we are getting into the fun part. As a Giants fan, this is always the fun part. We know the regular season certainly is not fun. This is the best part of the year for us, is the off season. Unfortunately, the offseason runs from October through March, and we just speculate for 5 months. And now we're going to actually start to get some answers. And obviously, we'll have a lot more to talk about when we know free agents that we sign. We'll have a better clear-cut picture, probably what they want to do in the draft. And that's going to be great. So definitely looking forward to that. Let's get to a couple of these super chats. We always appreciate you tuning in. If you haven't done so, do us a favor, hit the thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. It helps us out a lot. We're closing in on 3,000 subscribers, which is pretty freaking awesome. So thank you guys and girls for that, because we just started this. It's pretty awesome. Mr. Nixon, thank you much, says, what's up, everybody? I turned the big 33. It's all downhill from here. Yeah, you're young enough to be my kid. I want anyone but Rodgers on this team. I say we sign Russ and trade up to 1. Anthony, what do you think about that? Russell Wilson and trade up to 1. You think that's feasible? Would you go for that? And happy birthday, Mike.
Happy birthday, Mike. And that's kind of my ideal plan. I like Russell Wilson. I like the upside that he provides. I think that he gives you a better floor than what you already have. And I think that he doesn't really stop you from trading up to number 1 for a quarterback. And I also think that he's got a little bit more left in the tank than Aaron Rodgers, in the sense that he could potentially, if you need him to, start 2 years. If the quarterback, the rookie that you draft, God forbid, gets injured, like what happened with J.J. McCarthy, or is just not ready and is just not, playing well when you put him in there like Bryce Young, maybe you can have some sort of a 2-year contract with Russell Wilson. I don't see that with Rodgers. So I prefer Russ, and obviously I want to trade up to 1 because Cam Ward's my guy.
Mm-hmm. He's my guy too. Chris, how would you feel about trading up to 1, Cameron Ward, and getting Russell Wilson? Russell Wilson also comes with less baggage than Aaron Rodgers does.
That's true. And of course, happy birthday, Mike. Mike's been a long-time subscriber of both yours and mine, always in our shows. 33 years old, man. Congratulations, and hopefully you live another 330. But as far as
hopefully Jerry Jones lives that long too.
Yeah, hopefully Jerry Jones lives another 400. Maybe he's one of those people collected Social Security that's 300 years old.
Yeah, could be.
But to go back to the,
he doesn't need Social Security. He's doing just fine.
To go back to the question from Mike, where he says, "I want everyone but Rodgers on this team." I said, "I'm fine with Russ or Rodgers. I think they both accomplished the same thing. I think you view both of them as a stopgap quarterback. I always viewed Russ as the more realistic of the two, for the simple point that I brought up earlier, that I never thought Rodgers would be okay being that guy that was kind of mentoring the young quarterback on a bad football team when he was 41 years old. I thought that kind of aligned more with Russ, because he was basically willing to do that last year. He went into like an open quarterback competition with a young quarterback with Justin Fields, who most thought was going to be the starter, or at least at some point was probably going to overtake the job. So I always thought he'd be more willing to take this opportunity, but I'd be open to either one. I don't view either one as a guy that I probably want to be the quarterback for more than a year. I guess it would come down for me, if I was Shane, if they were both willing to take on that role that I talked about, being a mentor, who's willing to come for the cheaper contract, who's willing to take less of a long-term guarantee. But I'd be okay with either one.
Adriana, what do you think about signing Russ and trading up to number 1?
Happy birthday, Mike. I am a fellow March birthday and Piscean.
Happy almost birthday then.
Thank you. I'm turning 35, so I'm going to be a little bit older than Mike here. So don't worry, you've got a couple of years.
Wow, we had a woman actually say her age. I don't believe it. That usually doesn't happen, but it's all good. That's why we love Adriana, because she pulls no punches. She don't give a you know what.
Well, I'll say that until now. Maybe once I hit 40 is when I'll start lying.
40 is great. I'm almost done with 40, so there you go. I'm almost 50. It's great. It's a lovely ride.
That's what I hear. I'm kind of with Mike on this. Like, I'm not sold on Rodgers. I'll eventually get over it if that's who they end up picking. But my number 1 is Justin Fields. And I think we all agree on this, that if possible, we would take Justin Fields for like a 2-year deal. But I'm also on board with Russ. If they can't get Justin, I'm fine with Russ for a 1 or 2 year deal. Maybe that means that if they don't trade up to 1, which I'm also on board with Cam Ward. So if they do that, then great. But if they don't do that, then I'm fine with getting like a Jalen Milroe or a Will Howard. And then in 2026 is when you get your real starting quarterback. And then, maybe you have Will Howard end up being your backup, and Tommy DeVito is out of here since it's the last year on his deal anyway. So let's bulk up the quarterback room while we can.
Yeah, listen, Russell Wilson and trading up to 1 is fine. Listen, I don't care who the hell it is. I don't care if it's Aaron Rodgers. I don't care if it's Justin Fields. I don't care if it's Jameis Winston. I don't care if it's Russell Wilson. If they trade up to get Cameron Ward, I'm going to be freaking happy. I don't care who the hell the bridge quarterback is. I'm going to be happy. any way you slice it, it'll for me anyway. I can speak to this. I can't speak for anybody else, but it'll give me some kind of, hey, some excitement, something to look forward to. He may be terrible. He may be awful. But at least he'll be like, hey, maybe we have a guy here. At least we have something to look forward to. We can at least see how he plays because we knew what we were getting for the last 6 years. And we knew it wasn't very good. So at least this will give us some hope to say, hey, maybe this kid does have it. I wouldn't expect him to do what Jaden Daniels did this year and take us to the NFC Championship game. But at least you have, like I said, some hope, maybe some hope for the future that, hey, we got our guy. Now let's build around our guy and become a contender. We'll see what happens.
And at the end of the day, Bad Dog, whether it's Shedeur Sanders or Cam Ward, I'm going to be fine if they trade up and they say that's my quarterback. Right. Because at the end of the day, that's their guy. They're putting their job on the line. It's worth 2 second-round picks if that's what it costs to go up and get the quarterback that you deem to be the best quarterback in the draft. And I would almost feel more relieved at that point because I could be like, okay, they had their choice. We know for a fact this was the quarterback they preferred. They didn't stay at 3 and took the second best option. And if the quarterback hits, we're going to be laughing about those 2 second-round picks. These teams with these franchise quarterbacks wouldn't trade them for 7 first-round picks now. So that's the way I look at it. I'm going to applaud it. I'm going to say, okay, that's their guy. Let's hope the guy hits, no matter who they trade up for. If they elect to go that route with the first overall pick.
Yeah. And like you said, then you have a little bit of faith. At least I feel like I would have more faith in Joe Schoen, that they have firm belief and they are all on board with the fact that Cam Ward is their guy, so much so that they are willing to give up future picks and whatever it takes to get him and bring him in and, eventually bring us some wins, I hope.
Yeah, whoever it is, let's hope that they are the right choice and they do bring us wins, because I'm sure I can speak for every Giants fan when I say this. I'm sick of freaking losing football games. I am absolutely sick and tired of being 3-14, 4-13, 6-11. I'm sick and tired of it. I'm sick and tired of watching all the teams in this division get better and win Super Bowls and go to the playoffs. And meanwhile, we freaking are a speed bump for the rest of the league. Like, I'm sick and tired of it. Jeremy, thank you, brother. He says, good evening. As much as I don't agree with her, I agree with Adriana on her offseason takes, except for the draft. Pick BPA instead of trade. Well, BPA for the Giants, it might be quarterback at this point, honestly. But
yeah, I had said that if at 3, Carter and Ward are gone, I would think about trading back from 3 to 6, knowing that the Raiders want Sanders and getting Mason Graham or best player available at 6 instead of 3. And I say that because I'm personally a little worried about Hunter, because I think ultimately for the Giants, he's going to end up being strictly a cornerback. Maybe he's going to play a couple snaps on wide receiver, but if they bring in Devontae Adams and Aaron Rodgers, I don't think that Hunter would be getting any snaps at wide receiver. So then he's only going to play quarterback, which is okay. But I am sold on the fact that one of the number one priorities in free agency needs to be a veteran cornerback.
100%.
We have Drew Phillips, and we have, if you're lucky, you have a good veteran as your cornerback 1, Tay Banks, if he can figure it out, cornerback 2, and then you've got Drew Phillips, and maybe you have Cordell Flott and a couple other guys in the rotation, maybe another vet for a vet minimum. But I really want some veterans in the cornerback room, and I do think Hunter is going to be good. I just am not feeling like he's the right fit for the Giants.
I don't know if anybody's the right fit for the Giants. See, I don't know what the hell we're doing. We're NY Giants 20. You got to change that 26 now. One Giants free agent prediction for Monday, non-quarterback. I'm going to piggyback off Adriana. DJ Reed is a guy I could definitely see them going out and getting, without question. He's not going to be as – I forgot the other big-name cornerback. DJ Reed's market value is like $13 million. Who is it?
Travarius Ward and Byron Murphy.
Byron Murphy's the guy I'm thinking of. Byron Murphy's market value is like 23 million, and DJ Reed is like 10
Don't forget, we drafted DeAndre Baker over Byron Murphy. That was a good job.
Yeah, Dave Gettleman knows what he's doing. That's why he's on a beach store in Cape Cod. But I think DJ Reed is a guy they could definitely go after. That's a free agent, not a quarterback. Anthony, what do you think?
DJ Reed would be my prediction as well, but to throw another name out there, the Giants have been pretty adamant that they need to upgrade at guard, which I think we all agree with. I'm going to circle Tevin Jenkins. The Bears just made 2 trades for offensive guards that brought in Joe Thuney and Jonah Jackson. So it seems like Tevin Jenkins is absolutely going to walk in free agency. And he kind of fits the billing for the Giants, where he just wrapped up his rookie contract. He's a left guard, but he's also a right guard, can play either side of the line. And he probably comes in at a similar price tag to John Runyon. So I feel like it's pretty similar value to what the Giants got with John Runyon, although arguably a better and more consistent player than Runyon even was when the Giants signed him. So he fits the billing for me, and I think he's a really good player. He's a guy that, man, I've been doing Fireside Giants so long. I remember when he was coming out of the draft, and we were talking about him then, how much he would of an impact he would make for the Giants if he was there in the second round. Went to the Bears, but mean streak run blocker, fits the billing for the Giants. I'm going to say Tevin Jenkins is my prediction at guard for the Giants.
I like that.
Chris, is it possible the Giants? I think he's going to resign in Philadelphia, but would you take a shot at Mekhi Becton? He's a free agent.
Yes.
Yeah, he's got some flexibility too, though. He could play some guards, swing tackle. That could make sense. You worry about injuries with him, of course,
right.
But I mean, I like the DJ Reed prediction. I definitely think we're going corner for sure, and I think we're going to spend a decent amount there. And I've said it all along. I think we're going to go wide receiver with one of our higher price free agents, and I'm going to stick by that prediction. It's not going to be the top of the top, and T. Higgins was already tagged.
Yeah.
I'm going to go Devontae Adams. I'm slightly leaning we're going to get Rodgers. So if I believe that, I think there's a good chance we'll get Devontae Adams. Now, what worries me that I meant to mention earlier with the Rodgers Devontae Adams pairing, if we bring them here, one big thing that the Jets were upset about, or at least their wide receiving corps was upset about, once Devontae Adams got there, their number one wide receiver, what's his name? I can't off the top of my head. Garrett Wilson. He was upset with the lack of targets he was getting once Devontae Adams got there. Last year, Malik Neighbors was pelleted with targets. If Rodgers is going to do that with a veteran wide receiver in Devontae Adams, that may not be the best idea to bring in a guy like Devontae Adams if it's going to make your young up-and-coming wide receiver upset. So just a thought I was thinking about as we were talking about it earlier.
Oh, John, you got any predictions? Non-quarterback?
I like either DJ Reed or Byron Murphy for corner, but I'll throw out another name, another option, I think, for right guard is Dalton Risner, perhaps. Yeah. I'm on board with Mekhi Becton. I do kind of think that I don't know what Howie Roseman does, but I feel like he's going to figure it out and he's going to end up keeping him. I also think he could be like, oh, well, I'll take a little bit less money to stay on a Super Bowl winning team instead of going to the Giants. So wouldn't surprise me. But I do think there are some other good options. I also think Will Freeze could be an option. He's one of the younger free agent right guards that are going to be available, and he does have some flexibility at the guard position. So he would be a guy that I would also think about targeting in free agency.
We're going to find out soon enough, but not soon enough.
Loved Dalton Risner coming out of college. He went to Kansas State, if I recall. I loved him as a prospect. I'd be intrigued by getting him. That was a good name you brought up.
When I looked at the offensive lineman free agent list today, I noticed a lot of former Giants on that list, and I just started laughing. I'm like, God, he was a Giant. He was a Giant. He was a Giant.
Evan Seidler, would he come back?
Seidler, Van Roten just left. Who was the other one? Bredesen was out there. I'm like, how many of these guys were former Giants? Yep.
Will Hernandez.
Will Hernandez, another one. I'm like, these guys.
I could see them re-signing him too. I could see him reuniting here. He would make sense.
Maybe. New regime. Maybe. Depending on his price tag. Maybe.
Chris, thank you so much. Says with Mark and Manuel being the new DB coach, is DJ Reed and Manuel coach? Well, there you go. I think we all are in agreement that DJ Reed is probably somebody they're going to target. Now, if he's going to come here, the Giants are able to sign him. We don't know. But I do think that is a massive priority for the Giants as corner. I think we all can agree on that. That's a big time need for us, and he's a pretty good corner. So it would certainly help to have depth there. You can't have enough secondary depth without. Yeah. That's one thing Gettleman did get right. He just didn't draft the right guys, but he did get it right. That what was it, his first year? Didn't he draft like 4 corners or something? He drafted.
Well,
he drafted Ballantyne. He drafted Holmes, and he drafted.
Was it
Julian
Sam
Love
Beal?
was
Sam
kind of
Julian Love.
like a
Oh.
flexing. He was a
Yeah,
flex.
I mean, it was like every round he took a corner or a safety. It was
Yeah.
crazy.
And Sam Beal. I don't know if you mentioned him.
Sam Beal, no, I totally forgot about Sam Beal. So yeah, he loved his secondary. Gettleman did, and none of them ended up being any good. So it's good job, Dave.
Oh.
It's weird, but yeah, Chris, I think I think DJ Reed is definitely a guy they're going to look at without
For
question.
sure.
Your Gunner, our resident Commanders fan. Thank you, brother. He says the Giants are in a rough spot. Desperate GM coach, bad free agent quarterbacks, and terrible quarterback draft class. No good solutions at quarterback for the Giants. Now, Anthony, you've done a lot of research on this. So do you think, I mean, obviously, this quarterback class is not last year's. Last year's was special. I think we know that. Those don't come along very often. Would you say this is a terrible quarterback class? Would you use terrible as a word for the quarterback class itself?
No, I wouldn't use the word terrible for the quarterback class. I think Cam Ward does have star potential, and I also think Shedeur Sanders has star potential. There's just a lot more risk with these quarterbacks. Like, there's more question marks and unknowns, and that's ultimately why they're not viewed the same way as last year's quarterback class was. Like, for example, you've got Drake May, who played in the ACC, sure, but he was 6'5". He's built to play quarterback. Like, that guy was born to play the quarterback position at the NFL level. Both of these guys, Cam Ward and Shedeur Sanders, are 6'2" or less. So that's just one thing that's a question mark. And then you've got obviously their competition or their environment situation that they're in. So it's really just about how many question marks you have for each player. You know, you had a Heisman Trophy winner with Caleb Williams. You had a guy who put up big time numbers for LSU in the SEC with Jaden Daniels. Like, less question marks for those guys. It just comes down to question marks. But I'll also say I think bad free agent quarterbacks is off base. I think it's a really strong free agent quarterback market in consideration, or at least in comparison to other years that we saw. I mean, who was the big fish last year? Was Kirk Cousins coming off of a torn Achilles? I mean, that wasn't
Daniel Jones, and we saw how that worked out.
right. So the facts that we've got a market that potentially has a quarterback that threw for 35 touchdowns, won 14 games, and Darnold on it. Potentially Geno Smith might be available for trade. Aaron Rodgers is out there. Russell Wilson is out there. Justin Fields is out there. Jameis Winston is a serviceable player. And now Gardner Minshew. He was one of the top guys on the market last year, and he's not one of the top guys on the market this year, but he's out there. So I think that tells you it's actually a really strong free agent quarterback class or market. And if the Giants are intent on adding a veteran, they should be able to get a pretty decent one that can elevate their floor at the very least. Now, obviously, through the draft is how you elevate your ceiling, but I actually do think there is a sneaky, solid amount of talent in terms of free agent quarterbacks.
Yeah.
Adriana, how do you view the free agent quarterbacks and the draft quarterbacks? And again, it's not like we're going to be getting Jackson Dart or Milrow. I mean, pretty sure they're going to be able to get Sanders or Ward. Maybe the class overall isn't great, but the top two guys are pretty. You would think they're pretty decent and have some star potential.
Well, and I also think you look at what we've been watching for the last 5 or 6 years, and I will literally take any of those guys over our entire quarterback rooms for literally the last 5 years. Like, Tyrod Taylor was the best.
Mm-hmm.
So, and he's a certified backup forever. So, you know, it's not always going to be Tom Brady that's going to be available every year, but I think that there are good options out there. And like I said, a lot of the options are better than what we've been dealing with. I think that us specifically as like rational Giants fans also don't think that Aaron Rodgers or Russ Wilson or whoever it is that's going to come in is going to win us 12 games and we're going to win the NFC East and go to the playoffs. So like, there also is some sort of rationality here that like, we just want to see better quarterback play and more wins, but none of us expect that whoever this quarterback is, that they're going to come in and bring this team, you know, a Super Bowl this year.
Right. But they're not going to turn water into wine. That's for sure.
Yeah, right.
Not with this. But God, you just said something that's unbelievable. You're right. The last 5 years, Tyrod Taylor's been our best quarterback. That is insane.
Well,
the
Jones was better than Taylor.
But okay, but I mean,
since he first
got the contract, I agree. Taylor was
good Lord, Chris, what do you think about the quarterbacks in free agency and
quarterbacks in free agency?
I mean, I
think it's a better class than I thought it was going to be if you would ask me like two months ago. Because I wasn't sure if Rodgers was even going to be available. Like, I thought he may have retired. I thought that the Vikings very well may have tagged or signed Sam Darnold. He's kind of, he's when you think about it, and again, obviously he was in an ideal scenario with O'Connell and the weapons they have there, and he took advantage of it. But the year that he had at his age, there's not a lot of quarterbacks that throw 35, 36 touchdowns, whatever he threw, go to the playoffs and hit free agency. It doesn't happen that often.
And he's 26. He's not old at all.
Yeah, it's very rare that a young guy coming off a year like he had even hits free agency. So, yeah, to Anthony's point, I actually think it's a pretty strong free agency quarterback class. I don't think any of these guys, and none of us have the illusion of thinking this way, at least talking here, do we view them as a long-term answer, whether it be a Darnold, who I'm not in favor of. I think he's going to cost too much. A Russell Wilson, a Aaron Rodgers. I think we view them as stopgaps. At best, they're a Kerry Collins holdover for a few years until you figure it out long-term at the position. But, yeah, I agree. I think it's a pretty deep free agent class. As far as the quarterback class, listen, it's a guessing game, but it doesn't stack up to last year's class. It doesn't stack up to the Burrow class. Those classes were filled with guys with immense upside. I mean, as much as Cam Ward does have a high ceiling, I'm not trying to downplay it. He doesn't have the ceiling of a Drake May. He doesn't have the ceiling of a Jaden Daniels. And you could say the same thing for the Burrow class, right? So I wouldn't. It's not at that level, but I certainly think it's like an average quarterback class. I just think in recent history we've been spoiled with some incredible quarterback classes. Two out of the last 4 or 5 drafts. But yeah, I think it's an average quarterback class. I don't think it's incredible, but I don't think it's awful either. It's not near the level of like a Kenny Pickett.
2022. That was an awful class.
Yeah.
That was an awful class. 2022 was a terrible class. John, thank you so much. Says teams that are bad at least have a solid offense and a weak defense, or vice versa. The Giants suck on both sides. With 2025 being a defense-heavy class, would you be in favor of strengthening the defense first? Let me just start real quick. If both of those quarterbacks are going, absolutely. I mean, Chris and I absolutely loved Abdul Carter. We think he's fantastic, without question. Travis Hunter is.
I think we all love Chris Carter.
Right, exactly. Yeah, but we need a quarterback. I know Anthony said this before, and I agree with him. But no, actually, I think if I'm getting this right, and correct me if I'm wrong, Anthony, because I'm old and sometimes my brain don't work. You always said you don't draft based on need unless it's a quarterback, correct?
Correct.
Okay. We need a damn quarterback. So if Cameron Ward is there, you can't pass on him. You got it. And if Cameron Ward is there, I do think both of those defensive players are going, honestly. So if not, I wouldn't be upset if Abdul Carter fell. I just think the Giants absolutely need a quarterback first. And I don't think their defense is awful. I think there's a lot of talent there. I just don't think the scheme is very good. And I think our secondary needs to get a lot better, but you got to address that in free agency. So, Adriana, what do you think?
I want to say yes to this because I feel like if we get a good defensive lineman and a good corner, the defense could turn around real fast. So I feel like there's a little bit of optimism there. Like I thought last year, the defense was going to be way better than the offense. And when you looked at it, the first few games, they really were. Like the defense was close to being there. So
we led the league in sacks through the first 6 weeks of the season or something.
Yeah. And then I don't know what happened, but I feel like it's easier to fix the defense than it is the offense. When you look at the offense outside of a quarterback, we need multiple offensive linemen. We need another wide receiver, could probably use another running back. You could argue maybe we need another tight end if they don't ever use Daniel Bellinger again. I don't know what they're going to do with him. They should use him, but I think I would say yes to this because I think you can get a good quarterback in free agency. And if you can't get Cam Ward, then I'm on board with punting the quarterback until later rounds and just let the veteran play this year and do worry about a young quarterback next year.
Chris, what do you think?
I'm going to still stand firm on what I've thought all along. Maybe it won't be sure. Maybe it'll be Cam Ward, but I can't see unless 2 quarterbacks go with the first 2 picks, which I don't think is going to happen. I don't think the Titans are going quarterback. I can't see Joe Shane going down without getting his opportunity to draft his quarterback. And if he rolls with Aaron Rodgers and he drafts Mason Graham or, whoever it may be over one of those 2 quarterbacks and the team wins 5 games, he's gone and he never got his opportunity to take a swing at the quarterback. So I'm going to stick with what I've thought. I'm not even necessarily saying Adriana idea is a bad one. I don't think it is. I actually think long-term it could be the better option, the better path to go. But thinking about it from Shane's perspective, I'd be stunned if he doesn't end up with one of these two quarterbacks in the draft.
Anthony, by the way, I didn't mention it. Anthony, I love your sweater, by the way.
Thanks.
Awesome.
Shout out my friend Tyler who thrifted this. He was in the thrift store, saw it, thought of me. Shout out to you,
Very
buddy.
nice.
Appreciate it. Pretty cool. It's vintage from the 80s.
I was going to say, unlike all you guys and girl, I am vintage from the 80s, and I actually remember watching that Super Bowl and watching them win, and it was fantastic. Anthony, what do you think about that? Would you be in favor of going defense before the quarterback?
Not before the quarterback. I'm in favor of drafting defensive players in this draft because it is a strong draft class for defense, and that just ties into me going best player available. I think naturally you're going to draft some defenders in this draft class because there's so many good defensive linemen in particular. I think Daniel Jeremiah said he had 24 starting or 12 or 24, something
24.
ridiculous. 24 starting defensive linemen in this draft class. Yeah, ridiculous. So at some point, the Giants should draft a defensive lineman because they need one, but also because it's going to be the best player on the board. And so is a running back at some point in this really strong running back class. So you should just draft best player available and build a good roster because I think that ties in here to everything we're talking about. What I think Joe Schoen is trying to do, if he's not able to get Cam Ward at number one, I think he's going to want to address quarterback in free agency, do this Kansas City Chiefs Alex Smith model, build up the roster as much as he can with a decent quarterback in there. And then in a couple of years, that's when he sells the farm. Once the team is good, then he sells the farm for the quarterback. That's what I think he's trying to set up if he's not able to get his quarterback.
Did he already do that, though? Did he already do that with Daniel Jones? Can he do that?
Arguably, yes, debatably, but this is why he should have been fired. But you know,
that's my line of thinking. I'm like, I don't know if he could sell Maron doing that again. Build.
Well, I just think that's what he was trying to do with Stafford. I think he was like, Stafford can make this roster good for 2 years. I'll keep adding talent and then sell the farm for a quarterback eventually. I think he tried to do it last year. Tried to sell the farm for Drake May, just didn't happen. So, but that might be what he's trying to do now.
Might be.
Last one of the night, Jackson. Thank you so much. Chris, we'll start with you. If the Giants draft Hunter, what about him as our wide receiver 2 instead of a cornerback and sign a veteran quarterback?
I think I kind of agree with Adriana. I think no matter where he goes, if you listen to most people that get paid to do this, that know what they're talking about, most of them view his primary position, at least as of now, to be a cornerback with the ability to also play wide receiver. So I think he'll certainly play wide receiver, whether we sign Devontae Adams or whether we don't. I think he will have a role. Maybe he'll have 10 to 15 snaps a game where he's, maybe in third and longs, he comes in when the game's on the line with 5 minutes left, 2-minute drills. You use him a bit more at that position. But I think his primary position at the NFL level, if you listen to almost any scout, it's going to be the cornerback position. I think if the Giants were to draft him, he'd be their cornerback day one, and they'd shift Banks over to the 2, and you'd see him, maybe get 2 or 3 catches a game.
Yep, I'm going to agree with that. Adriana, what do you think?
The only problem I would have with that is them going back-to-back years and picking a wide receiver in the top 10 with this roster as a shit show. Like, that to me would just be unacceptable. So if you get Travis Hunter, you got to use him on both sides, which is what I think they would do. And like Chris said, I think he would end up playing more snaps as a corner, and then you throw him in as a wide receiver, which is what I would prefer to see them do, because I just think that the Giants are not in a position in any way, shape, or form to pick someone at 3 who is strictly a wide receiver, or someone like Hunter and only use him as a wide receiver. That would be malpractice.
Anthony, what do you think about that?
Yeah, I think one perspective that I'll offer is we should have learned this lesson last year. You can't have enough good cornerbacks and you can't have enough healthy cornerbacks. So if you're going to sign a veteran cornerback, that shouldn't stop you from drafting Hunter. And if you plan on drafting Hunter, you should still get a veteran. You should just add talent everywhere that you can. Again, the best player available mantra. But I think if you have DJ Reed, Deontay Banks, Cordell Flott, Drew Phillips, and Travis Hunter, well, now you finally have a decent secondary, and it took you long enough. So I love Travis Hunter. He is my favorite player in the draft class. I think he's the best. I think there's just no way he's not a good player, either at receiver or cornerback or both. Don't know, don't care. He's going to be tremendous. So if you have the opportunity to draft him and you don't need a quarterback, then you should draft him and just figure out, once you have him on your roster, where he's going to play. Wherever you need him, he will play, and he'll play it well. So that would kind of be my strategy with Travis Hunter.
Yeah, I agree. I think that he probably is a corner number 1, but you would definitely have wide receiver packages for him. He's not going to play every snap and every side of the ball like he did in college, but I do think his primary position is corner. And I believe that he would definitely have some wide receiver package as well. But I don't think you draft him to be a wide receiver too. I don't think that would be his primary position because, like Adriana said, I don't think you want to draft 2 wide receivers in the top 6. And I also don't think he's as good as Malik Neighbors as far as wide receiver talent goes. So why would you draft a wide receiver 3rd overall? That's not as good as the one you picked 6th overall last year. So I don't know if they're going to take Travis Hunter. I don't know what they're going to do. What I do know is we appreciate you watching another edition of Giants Collective. We'll be live again on Friday night at 7 o'clock. We're going to have some more clarity as far as free agency goes, and we'll definitely have more rumors because those never stop. And then, like I said, when we do this show a week from today, we're going to have a lot
of
questions. We're going to have we're going to have some damn answers. No more questions. Well, we'll have questions about what they're going to do in the draft, but I think we'll have a lot more clarity on what they're going to do. And that is going to be, not that the shows aren't fun anyway, because it is fun to talk Giants with you lovely people. But next week is going to be a lot of fun because we're actually going to know, what's going on. Real quick, let me just get this up here really quick. Get rid of this guy. Bring this up. Christian says, shout out to Anthony and Fireside Giants. What do we do with our failed draft picks, a.k.a. Hyatt and Neal?
Thank you, Christian. I think my bold prediction for this offseason is that Evan Neal is getting traded. There was chatter that there were teams that called the Giants about Evan Neal at the deadline, and the Giants refused to trade him for one reason or another.
We don't trade anybody.
They didn't make any trades, but I think the fact that they held on to him actually might help them in the long run because he ended up playing the best football of his NFL career shortly after the trade deadline. So I think he boosted his value in some ways, and I think he's going to get traded. Jalen Hyatt, though, if we want to talk about weak classes, yeah, there's some really talented wide receivers at the top, but it's pretty thin in the middle rounds and late rounds of this NFL draft class. Unlike it was the last 3 years, it was really stacked at wide receiver. And also, I think the free agency market for wide receiver is real questionable. So I think Jalen Hyatt's going to stick around on this roster. Don't know how much he plays next year because I think they're going to try to add talent, but I think he's going to be here and play some sort of role. But thank you, Christian. Appreciate it.
If Evan Neal goes to another team and is a good guard, I am going to lose my absolute mind.
That's what I was going to say too. I don't want to trade him. I'd give him the chance to play guard before we don't make the same mistake we made with that Eric Flowers. And personally, unless the USFL, you're allowed to make interleague trades, I don't see anybody giving up a whole lot for Evan Neal. So that's my mindset. I'm with Adriana on this. I would much rather see the Giants give the opportunity to see if Neal could become at least a decent guard before we just say, let's get rid of this guy.
Yeah. You picked 7th overall for a reason. There's got to be talent somewhere. And we saw with Justin Pugh, we drafted him as a right tackle. He wasn't the best there. We moved him to guard, and he ended up being a pretty damn good guard. We saw it with Eric Flowers. We never moved him to guard, which I screamed about for years before, well, I think I even did this when I was on YouTube, but it was before I changed formats and everything else. This was before there was a lot of content creators and stuff just trying there. They never did. He went to Washington, became a decent guard, and got $30 million from the Dolphins. So I'm with you. I wouldn't want to give Evan Neal away for nothing. I'd rather just see if he could be anything because I just don't think I think it's a low risk, high reward thing. You're not going to get much from him anyway. Let him have a chance playing. If he becomes a good guard, then shit. Then you solve the problem there. So, and if he doesn't, you lost nothing either. What are you going to get, a 6th round pick? I mean, if we're not willing to trade freaking Saquon Barkley for anything or Xavier McKinney for anything, what the hell are we going to get? What are they going to get for him? So, like I said, Chris, unless it's a USFL guy, maybe they get a kid's Happy Meal and a toy. I don't know, because Evan Neal talked about flipping burgers. I don't know what the hell they're going to get for him, but it ain't going to be a hell of a lot. But on that note, again, appreciate all you guys and girl. Appreciate everybody in the chat hanging out. There's almost 300 people in here, which is awesome. And like I said, I think next week we're going to have a big audience because it's good. It's going to be a lot of fun talking about what the hell we did. And I'm excited to see what the hell we're going to do. So for Adriana, Anthony, and Chris, enjoy the rest of your night, everybody. It's Giants Collective signing out, and we out. Peace.